This video is going to be split up into two parts, one talking about the problems I have with the base game and the other talking about the problems I have with the Royal. Most of this script was written before I got to the Royal section of the story, and I have a lot of problems with the Royal section of the story, so stay tuned. I've played all the Persona games in the Persona series, 3, 4, and 5, the only Persona games. I love SMT2, and I've played all of the games going on screen right now. I've even beaten one of them. But the Persona series has always been really special to me. Persona 4 was a pick-me-up in a dark time in my life back in early 2017, and is now one of my all-time favorite games ever. All of the characters resonated with me in one way or another that I could understand or couldn't at the time. Cough cough kanji. I then played Persona 5 later that year and was kind of disappointed. It wasn't as good, but at the time I thought, oh well, it's kind of unfair for me to expect them to top my favorite game ever. And then I played it again in 2018 and I realized, hey, that wasn't as good as the first time I played it. I don't remember the dungeons being that tedious and the characters being that flat. And then this year, I played Royal. Now that the novelty had lifted, I realized how much of a downgrade this game really is compared to 3 and 4. Face it, Persona 5 is the worst of the trilogy. Again, I'd like to stress that I still like this game, and I played through it 3 times, so that has to say something. Let's start with something simple, like the battle system. The battle system is your turn-based system with Pokemon elements, aka weaknesses, but when you exploit those weaknesses, the enemy gets downed, and you have an extra immediate turn with that same character. When all of the enemies get downed, you get the opportunity to have an all-out attack where all enemies get damaged. It's like this across all Persona games, and there's some differences. In Persona 5, they added the baton pass system. It makes it so that when you down an enemy, you can pass to another ally so that they can have an extra turn instead. At first this seems like something that could open up your options and make battles more interesting, but it really does the opposite. Before, if I got an extra turn, even if I didn't have something to exploit the weaknesses, I could use a buff skill or status effect, which adds a layer of depth. In fact, I could use the same skill again to make the enemies dizzy, and which will keep them down for a few turns. They removed that in Persona 5, of course. The dominant strategy just becomes to use Baton Pass over and over again, and then every battle becomes the same. Weakness, Baton Pass, all-out attack. Baton Pass is overpowered, and you would have to not use it to make the battle system fun. I also like to mention that Futaba now gives you support skills, health, or even SP in Royal in between turns, making the game even more trivial. Now, to clarify, my argument here isn't that it's easy so it's bad. I'm saying that the game is actively making itself less complex and more repetitive by adding these things, which will make the overall combat more tedious. And the problem is mostly gone when you're fighting enemies who don't have weaknesses or have blocks to prevent you from hitting it. So having some smarter enemy design would go a long way to help fix this problem. Speaking of design, let's talk about... In Persona 3, you have no control over your party members, and all of the dungeons are auto-generated in the most boring way possible. There's not much to talk about here other than that it started this trend. In Persona 4, all of the dungeons are still auto-generated, but they are long hallways broken up by little rooms with treasure. And there's at least one floor per dungeon that isn't randomly generated. Basically, Persona 4 kinda tries. Now, Persona 5 actually has designed dungeons, meaning that they're not just a bunch of random rooms, they are actual designed levels. Now, are those dungeons any good?
No.
After the 4th dungeon, they stopped trying to have interesting challenges and just filled the palaces with random obstacles to pad out the game even further. Take Okumura's Palace, for example. The airlock puzzle section does nothing but waste your time. It barely has to do with the space theme, nor Okumura or anything about his employees. Yet it takes an hour. Don't even get me started on Shido's dungeon. That dungeon, again, just pads everything out with having 5 letters you have to find, which means 5 mini-bosses and 5 puzzle areas in between, usually followed by another mini-boss to block your way. All while this repetitive music is playing over the palace that cycles through the same 2 sections over and over and over again. How about Size Palace, which is actually my favorite of the post-Egyptian palaces. Your goal for the palace is to gather large amounts of chips so you can get a key card which leads to another area where you have to do the same thing. Get another key card. Rinse and repeat until you get to the boss. Along the way, you'll find out the different ways that side cheats and rigs the games. Again, I like this, it's just the way that the game goes about executing this idea. Each floor has 2 places you can go to earn chips. Take the first floor for example. You have a room where you can earn chips from big slot machines and another room with dice games. But sadly they designed the game so there's a specific order you have to go through the rooms to get the chips, which takes player choice and freedom out of the equation. Same thing with Shido's letters of recommendation I mentioned before. You can only do them in a certain order, restricting the player's decisions. I should be able to at least choose what boss I want to do first. Instead they're just placed one after another in the laziest way possible, with backtracking thrown in for good measure. This may seem like a sudden shift in positivity, but I like Persona 5's characters a lot. I think they're kind of bland but still good. As people, I certainly like them better than Persona 3's characters, and I found half that cast to be unlikable and the other half to be just fine. But here's the thing with Persona 3 and 4's characters. In those games, they actually hang out and act as friends. Less so with P3, but with P4 Golden it added so much to the game. One, it added downtime to the game in a way, like a break from the main story, but it also gave room for the characters to be like people, and not like video game characters. Just having them bounce off of each other and banter is a net positive, because it fleshes the cast out more, and makes you want to connect with them more. There is shockingly so little of this in Persona 5. Almost every conversation always steers back to the Phantom Thieves, or the next target, or the metaverse. Maybe, if you're lucky, you'll get one or two funny lines, but the game seems almost determined to not have the characters hang out as people. Take the fireworks festival. The characters arrive, talk, and then the fireworks festival gets cancelled, and all the characters go inside of a mini-mart and steer the conversation back to relevant stuff. I shouldn't have to mention the Destinyland trip, because I don't want to fill this video with spoilers, but if you know, you know. The only outlier is the Hawaii trip, which feels unfinished. You don't even get to see the dialogue for the Babe Hunt. Come on, Atlas. And Best Boy Mishima keeps bringing up the fan site too during the Hawaii trip. I thought this was really strange because Persona 4 Golden had so many of these events. A trip to the beach, going camping, and it just shows the characters acting normal. I'm not going to harp on this point for too long because Shenpai made a great point about this, but even the social links can't help but steer back to the Phantom Thieves. You always have to go back to Mementos or something. I was hoping that P5R would remedy this or add more events, but it didn't. I guess I'll let fanfics fill the void. I must restate that I still think Persona 5 is a good game, just one that has quite a lot of issues. I think the Persona team can definitely do better than this. I mean, I played it all the way through 3 times. That has to mean something. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry it took so long to come out. The next week's video will be on Umurangi Generation, or whenever I get that one out. If I end up having problems with Persona 5 Royal, like I have a few, I might make a follow-up video to this one, specifically about Royal's content. Have a great day!